The wind moved like a restless spirit across the empty plains, carrying with it the scent of dust and the faint echo of something lost long ago. Miles from the nearest town, the land stretched wide and unforgiving, broken only by the weathered fences and skeletal windmills that dotted the horizon. Jack McCall, a man carved from the same stubborn earth he worked, rode slow on his chestnut mare. Eyes narrowed beneath the brim of his hat. Life out here was simple, hard, and solitary, just the way he liked it. But that day, the silence was broken by something more fragile than the wind's whisper, a sound that didn't belong. At first, it was so faint he thought it was the creak of old wood or the call of a far-off coyote. Then it came again, a voice, strained, desperate. He urged the mare forward, each hoof striking the baked ground with a dull thud. Over the rise, he saw her, a woman, kneeling in the dirt, her dress torn and clinging to her like a second skin, her knees bloodied and her arms scraped raw. Blonde hair matted with dust framed a face twisted in pain, her eyes glassy with exhaustion. She clutched her stomach as if holding herself together. Jack dismounted in one smooth motion, boots crunching on the grit, and dropped to a knee beside her. "Please, no more pain," she whispered, her voice like dry leaves breaking in the wind. He scanned the horizon, senses sharp. There was no way she had just wandered here. Trouble had a way of leaving its mark, and he could see it in her trembling hands. "You're safe now," he said quietly. Though he knew the words were a promise he'd have to fight to keep, her breathing hitched, and for a moment she seemed to shrink into herself, as if bracing for another blow that never came. He glanced toward the mare, then back at her. He couldn't leave her here. Not in this heat. Not with whoever had done this possibly still out there. Lifting her gently, he felt how light she was, as if life itself had been drained from her. She tensed at his touch, but he kept his voice steady, low, like speaking to a spooked animal. The ride back to his ranch was slow, the sun burning its way toward the horizon, painting the sky in gold and blood-red streaks. She said nothing, just leaned against him with her head bowed, every breath a quiet battle. Jack's thoughts were already turning: water, food, clean clothes. Maybe Doc Harland if she was bad off. But more than that, he thought of the men who might be looking for her, the kind who broke things and didn't care what was left behind. The ranch came into view, weathered boards and quiet corrals standing like sentinels against the open land. He carried her inside, past the creak of the front door and into the dim coolness that smelled faintly of coffee and old wood. He set her down on the couch, fetched a blanket, and poured water from a tin pitcher. Watching as her shaking hands brought the cup to her lips, she drank greedily, coughing once, then let the cup rest in her lap. Her eyes finally met his blue, but clouded by fear. "They'll come for me," she whispered, and in that instant, Jack knew his quiet life was over. Whoever they were, they had left their mark on her, and now they would have to deal with him. Out here, a man's word was as good as his gun, and he had given his without thinking twice. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching long across the floorboards, and somewhere beyond the fence line, a hawk's cry cut through the stillness. Jack stood at the window, scanning the land, knowing that before long, the wind would carry more than just dust, and when it did, he'd be ready. The devil had taken enough from her. Now, it would have to answer to him. Asterisk. The night settled over the plains like a heavy blanket, but Jack didn't sleep. He sat in the old chair by the front window, rifle across his lap, eyes fixed on the dark horizon. The woman, her name was Emily, he'd learned was asleep in the spare room, though her sleep came in fitful bursts, haunted by whatever hell she had escaped. She had told him bits and pieces between sips of coffee. A man named Clay Maddox, owner of a gambling hall in Dry Creek. The kind of man whose smile was just a mask for the cruelty underneath. She had worked there, not by choice, and when she tried to leave, Maddox made sure she understood nobody left him without paying in blood. Jack didn't ask what happened after that. The bruises on her skin and the terror in her eyes told enough. Just before dawn, the horses in the corral grew restless, their snorts sharp in the still air. Jack stepped outside, the cold biting at his face, and there it was, the faint orange glow on the horizon, torchlight moving slow, deliberate. He knew it wasn't a search party, it was a hunt. By the time the first rider came into view, Jack was already in position behind the fence, post, the rifle snug against his shoulder. "Morning, McCall," called a voice from the dark, and then Maddox himself rode into the lantern light, dressed in black from hat to boots, with a silver-handled revolver at his hip. Maddox looked like a man who had shaken hands with the devil and enjoyed the deal. "You've got something of mine," he said, smiling thin. Jack didn't move. "She's not yours, not anymore." Maddox's smile tightened, his men fanning out behind him, rifles and shotguns gleaming in the low light. "You can't keep her, Cowboy. I'll take her back, and I'll take your land just for the trouble." Jack's heart beat steady. Slow fear had no place here. "You'll leave now," he said, voice even, "or you'll leave in the ground." The standoff hung in the air like the moment before a storm breaks. Then Maddox's hand twitched toward his gun, and the world exploded. Jack's first shot took the nearest rider clean out of the saddle. The corral erupted with gunfire, flashes lighting the dark, the air thick with smoke, and the smell of gunpowder. Emily, woken by the noise, appeared at the door, a pistol in her shaking hands. Jack shouted for her to stay inside, but she didn't listen. Fear had burned into something else now, something fierce. She fired, and one of Maddox's men fell clutching his chest. The fight was brutal, fast, and loud. Jack moved like a man who had done this before, every shot deliberate, every movement measured. By the time the smoke cleared, 3 men lay, still in the dirt. 2 more had fled into the darkness, and Maddox was on his knees, bleeding from a wound in his side, hatred burning in his eyes. Jack walked up to him, rifle barrel steady. "You come back," he said coldly, "and it won't be your side I aim for." Maddox spat in the dirt, but said nothing, letting his men drag him away into the night. When the last hoofbeat faded, silence returned, broken only by the soft whimper of the wind. Emily stood at the doorway, the pistol still in her hands, her chest heaving. Jack walked to her, took the gun gently, and set it aside. "It's over," he said, though they both knew men like Maddox never truly disappeared. But for now, the ranch was quiet, and the dawn that broke over the plains seemed a little warmer. She looked at him then, really looked, and in her eyes was something he hadn't seen before: trust. "Thank you," she whispered. Jack just nodded, tipping his hat slightly, and turned toward the rising sun. Out here, there were no medals, no applause, just the knowledge you'd done right, no matter the cost. And somewhere deep inside, Jack knew that whatever came next, he wouldn't be riding alone anymore. If you've been with us through every moment of this fight, you know the West has more stories, more battles, and more hearts worth protecting. Don't miss the next one. Subscribe now, and ride with us into the next sunrise. Asterisk. The days that followed were quiet on the surface, but Jack could feel the land holding its breath. Emily settled into the ranch slowly, her hands learning the rhythm of feeding chickens, patching worn clothes, and boiling coffee on the old wood stove. She still flinched at sudden noises, still stared out the window longer than needed, as if expecting shadows to move. Jack didn't press her. He knew healing came in its own time, same as the seasons. But he also knew Maddox wasn't the kind of man to lick his wounds and disappear. Men like him were made of spite and pride, and both were dangerous when mixed. One afternoon, Jack was repairing the fence line when he spotted a figure on the ridge, a lone rider who didn't move for a long while, just watching. When Jack turned to look straight at him, the rider wheeled his horse and vanished into the hills. That night, as the wind rattled the shutters, Emily's voice broke the quiet. "I had a brother," she said softly. "Maddox killed him when he tried to get me away." Jack's hands tightened on the mug of coffee he was holding, his jaw working. "Then this isn't just about keeping you safe," he said. "It's about finishing what he started." The next morning, they rode into Dry Creek. The town was a thin stretch of buildings straddling a dusty main street, the kind of place where curtains twitch when strangers pass. Jack walked straight into the saloon, Emily close behind. The piano stopped mid-note. Maddox wasn't there, but his men were, 4 of them, lounging at a table, cards in hand, eyes cold. Jack's voice carried like a hammer strike. "Tell your boss I'm coming for him. Tell him this ends with him in the ground or me." The room stayed silent, but he saw at the flicker of unease in their eyes. When they stepped outside, Emily's hand found his. She didn't say thank you, didn't need to. The road back to the ranch felt heavier, the air thick with the knowledge that the storm was coming again. But this time, Jack wasn't just defending his land. He was fighting for her freedom, for the ghost of her brother, for the simple truth that some devils had to be faced head-on. And when the time came, he knew they would face him together, no matter the cost.